Take a look at this book. This is just the latest of William Seaton. And we're going to do something very different tonight. This is going to be fun because I'm going to embarrass the hell out of him. I'm going to make him come up here and deliver his own biography autobiographically. Ta-da! How about that? Come here, son. Look at this. Look at this fabulous literate soul. Can you believe the literacy I'm holding in my arms? Anyway.
Well, thanks for the invitation.
Are you kidding? It's a
to come by here. And, you know, I've always considered the Friday the 13th to be an auspicious day. In fact, today is my 75th birthday. And having always been sort of susceptible to the left-handed path, then I never minded. Unfortunately, it wasn't a Friday the day I was born, but it has been now and then since.
And you're just entering your sweet section, as we talked about before. But this man, talk about promoting the power of the word. Cities around the world. My wife is Czech. I had a resident alien passport with the Czech Republic.
They love your music in the Czech Republic.
They do. They do. I've had premieres there. Even the bathrooms have great acoustics. The recordings, it's electrifying, and the people know.
And the prices at the opera in Prague are so low.
Well, because the whole idea is for people to come. It's not to ostracize through class delineation. This is nonsense. But yes, he did read in Prague and London. And you were teaching also in prisons, and you were also in Africa. And
yeah,
please tell everything. Please.
Well, I spent a mad amount of time in graduate school, but mainly because it allowed me to live in poverty, but spend all my time studying languages and reading poetry. And I did that for 8 years. And apart from that, so I've taught in a lot of different circumstances, including in Nigeria, in universities, in prison, in New York. But in the, as an undergraduate even, I was involved in happenings in the 60s and performance art events. And then went out to San Francisco with a number of like-minded people and joined up with a poetry crew that would read out in the street, had a poetry storefront, called Cloud House, run by Steve Kushner, Kush. And I've kept up both the kind of study side and the old poetry interest, and at the same time tried to stay up with things happening, improvisational work, chance work, things that are going on.
If I may, you are an embodiment of one of my mantras that we're constantly in school. And when you kind of admonishing yourself, staying in graduate and study, if you look under Elizabeth, William Cecil, you look at the 17th Earl of Oxford, Edward de Vere, who really wrote the canon. But the education that he got from Smith and the education he got as a ward of Cecil, and you have to put this in a perspective, when illiteracy was 99% of everything. And those who had libraries... Wait, you're ahead of the curve.
Go ahead.
So those who had libraries, this was the ephemeral wealth. So by the time, for instance, De Vere was 14, he was already fluent and able to write in Latin fluently, plus his other languages. And these were these amazing seminal moments. It was Elizabeth later who recognized the importance of propaganda through the plays to educate the illiterate population to the Tudor line, i.e. Henry IV, V, VI, on and on and on, all the historical plays. Very exciting stuff. But now we're in the present, and it seems now there's not even a need to burn books anymore because people voluntarily do not wish to read, which is terrifying, because democracy is the power of the word. And one gentleman, as incongruous as his history may prove to himself, was so brilliant when it came to multi-languages, that he invented the Lazy Susan, not for his party animal friends, but to simultaneously read all kinds of translations. I'm talking about Thomas Jefferson. Literacy was everything. The cornerstone of the Library of Congress were his 6,000 books, of which he read every one. The power of literacy. And now when we hear all these mantras of what is true and what isn't, the scientific investigation is so important upon ourselves through the likes of these gifted souls standing next to myself. And without that further rambling on my part, I'm going to disappear from the screen and Bill is going to rock the joint, so have fun with it.
Well, you're too kind, Hayden. Let me just mention this about this book before I put it down. It came out in October, and it's from Giant Steps Press. And this is significant, I think, also. Giant Steps published mainly books relating to jazz for a number of years. And then they started moving into poetry of influenced by jazz, beat poetry, post-beat poetry. They're just recently published a book of letters between Allen Ginsberg and David Cope. Randy Ruark is right now editing a gigantic multi-volume series of the class notes from the lectures of the likes of Ginsberg and Burroughs and all kinds of other people. So that's on Giant Steps Press, named of course after the John Coltrane tune and album. So that is the book. It's on Amazon, and I'll give you a survey of it.
Read from it?
Oh, I've copied these things out, so I don't like having a whole pack of bookmarks and trying to figure out which is which. I have 7 sections in the book. The poetry is compartmentalized that way, and so I'll just give a I'll read 1 or 2 from each of the sections in order to kind of give a survey of the whole volume. I have one selection from each series actually that I used for another purpose, and I wrote a couple of lines of comments, so I think I'll read them but not talk about it before the poem, but for these I'll read only a sentence or 2. So the first one, finally we're arriving at the poetry now. First poem is called Dia de los Muertos. On Dia de los Muertos, some here choose to picnic with their loved ones by their graves. And some then strive with gallow beer to kill mosquitoes of the mind that might draw blood. Out front, a wobbly Rambo sheds his shirt and dares the other men to come and fight. In corners of red eyes, I see bright tears. Thin dogs with hanging dugs pace back and forth. Their glance tells me there's nothing more to say. Of course, any comment should be superfluous, but what I said about this is Guatemala, where Gallo is known as a beer, not a wine brand, as it is in the United States. The nervous, scroungy, free-running dogs of developing countries suggest the whole tone of life in these poor neighborhoods. In this setting, the universal theme of mortality is colored by the traveler's knowledge of pre-Columbian human sacrifice, brutal colonialism, and the barbaric violence of decades-long civil unrest. And I'll read one other from this other scenes section, which is travel poems, poems about other places. And I'll do one from Varanasi, where I stayed on the banks of the Ganges for a week, where there is constant action going on down by the river. And I need to do one footnote preliminarily. This is called Mahashamsana. And Mahashamsana is one of the names by which Varanasi, or Benares as it used to be, is called. Mahashamsana means the great cremation ground. The cremation ground where the entire cosmos will be cremated. The corpse of the universe will be burned there in the Ghats at Varanasi. During nightly services at the Daraswamath Ghat, worshippers set tiny candles afloat in the river, and that was the scene I'm describing. I walked the Ghats with holy men and touts, and monkeys eyeing every scrap of food. The river Shiva loved flows by obscure with corpses, chemicals, and shit. The god must grin at dissolution, bright and fine, and welcome every shred of tender flesh, though Mother Ganges hardly could care less. Indifferent, hosting pathogens and fish, and bearing the brief flame of every wish. The next section is called Deviations, kind of wandering. As a matter of fact, in the introduction, I tell a story, an old Chinese story about a man who just went wandering and said he had no goal, no direction, and all of a sudden fell into enlightenment. And I comment, with these poems, I can promise no such rewards, only a few snapshots of consciousness, reflecting glints of shattered truth, which I wave in the dark like a blessedly naive child with a sparkler. Surely, a crystal ball is available in the refractions and reflections of every puddle in the gutter. These are just kind of like a cinema of thought process type poems. Here's one. I hurtled through the light and dark by trees that reach and strive indifferent to my course, by rocks with memories back before the flood, each facet marking some old painful break, eruption, gash, reshuffle. Read there, see tomorrow, far more live and clear than ever sortilege, astrology, or hepatoscopy could claim. Oh dear. Beat grass and withered weeds, a sudden bird, and wind that envies leaves of shrubs, and homeless sighs. Well, I meant to suggest, here's my comment I had written before, that the most common sights are surely more beautiful, remarkable, and significant than divination or magic. The scene before the eyes is always a gaze at the morphing flow of phenomena, and sometimes even the wise wind sounds sad. Another one from the Deviations section is titled, Whee! Beginning from the reverent and deeply held belief that matter and antimatter must in the end be equal, as positive and negative charges are equal, and in this way the cosmic donut was always already eaten. And if my dream is a map of the stars are also dreaming of me. Hogs dance with me at dinner, I'm the calf of every cow, and soldiers have joined each one the same theatrical troupe, as every action pushes round the spheres aloft. My foot attracts the ground as the earth attracts my mass. Each time I push, my love must sure push back. Only God makes us, and only we make God, and if we move at once, we move for joy. I cultivate my head each time I cultivate my garden, and making food, I shape my own profile. And as I pack the world in words, the words create that world. The third section is called Appetites. feast. Lo, be for me an oyster raw, unfathomable, inside the shell that lopped but answering tongue. And be for me an onion soup, so thick and savory sweet. Oh, be for me a leg of lamb as rich and strong as scrubby hills. And be for me a Brussels sprout, compact and layered like a lake quartet. Oh, surely you're my bread, and fit me like inhaled air. Do be for me tonight a custard flan, so melting to the tongue, with caramel atop, that brings an end to words. And on this I said, or as Bessie Smith sang, give me lots of candy, honey, love is grand. Here's another from the appetite section, one of a long series I've done for quite a while on produce poem, characterizing various items of produce. Here's the one on cherry. Whence the gravity of your deep, deep red, O cherry? You're some vestigially corporeal internal organ of an angel, perhaps, lingering since the celestial being could never quite shed a taste for soul in sauce and malicious wit. These weaknesses lead direct to the fruit's fine and parabolic taste. The lover of cherries is chained to earth's rack, knowing no better than to eat and eat until the bowl is exhausted, the plate littered with stems and stones. And the next section I called Songs, and it's ones in which I think that, to me, the germ, the origin of poetry is in playing with words, playing with sounds, playing with meanings, with the play of images in the mind, more than in any paraphrasable. You know, if you can paraphrase a poem, why have a poem? You can say it another way. So anyway, here's, I'll do two of these songs. Here's one of them. Yearly the killer bees yaw and romp through the golden filigree of plantain, like opals and carbuncles, dewy and light, that ravish the soul at the very first sight, confusing their victims, occluding their might. Soon their prey will sink in a swoon. These oligolectic bees buzz up a tune of garnet greens and things unseen, a hermit's eye, leanest of all the Essenes. A hermit's eye, leanest of all the Essenes. And here's another of those songs. Under the counterpane's tropical heat, it's torrid and humid down under the sheet, where natives go naked and nuzzle at will, down each damp valley, up each fertile hill. We've sailed past the Cape, we're rounding the Horn, we're starboard of Cancer, below Capricorn. And then the next section is Memento Mori, or poems about death. Dead trees in the forked arms of their fellows that followed, not eyes wide with utter unbelief, like comrades in war, unable to believe their trenchmate gone. The forest floor has generations layered like old Troy, but back and back to time's get-go, and each supports the next, till in the ultimate sub-basement, The elevator operator lifts one wry eye. The door slides. The secret's out, and all distinctions fade. Then everything relaxes, all lets go, no longer any gap from one to one. The manic dance can pause, so brief between exhale and inhale, before time's arrow, like some god of locomotives, blows its lonely whistle and speeds on down the line, as though the terminus must hold that counter where one can sit and ask one's heart's desire. So well worth racing toward. My critical comment coming in on that was, in what I like to think of as a reinforcement of theme, several of the images here are already largely faded from the general imagination. A locomotive, for instance, had much more powerful associations 100 years ago or 50 years ago, and elevator operators are now rare birds, weaving a muted strain of nostalgia into the story. And here's another death one. Bullfight. Came from seeing an actual bullfight on television. Just about the only one I've ever watched, I think. Bullfight. It was enough, the one, I think. The bull first snatched the cape, and who can blame the beast? The banderilleros rushed out to help, and then the matador with his new cloth resumed the ritual until the time of truth, which is to say of death. The sword's point, though, did not strike the heart. The toro sucked great breaths and trembled, then pierced again he fell. One can avert one's eyes right now, tomorrow too, but in the end, one can't. The estocada comes for every beating heart. And onto something entirely different. Now I have a section of previously unpublished in book form texts, liturgies, sermons, and parables from the Lama Swine Toil. The Lama Swine Toil is a surrealist chaplain that accompanied the surrealist cabarets at the Seligman Center, and is continuing his spiritual practice. I'll read his introduction of himself and then one of his parables. I am the Lama Swine Toil. I am the belated surrealist chaplain. I am the guru without disciples. I am the yogi who arrived late and whose stomach rumbled out of a full lotus for the next hour, distracting all seekers alike. I am wise, though one would never guess it from all the crumbs about my plate at dinner. My mind wanders the heights and still calls out, plaintive as a wild goose. My shoelaces were untied as I dozed. The novice monks tied them up in an original manner so that when I woke and stumbled, I fell into perfect enlightenment. My words are precisely as effective in your behalf as the voice from the radio, but I cannot stop speaking them nonetheless. And here is the Lama Swine Toil's parable of the not okay corral. He's speaking in American idiom to the West. He walked the dusty, sun-baked streets of a town on the far frontier of metaphysics. His faithful Indian companion whispered sutras in his ear. The townspeople hustled off to shelter behind the nearest received ideas. The tumbleweeds blew, and the buzzards cried out wise suggestions, but he never heard, just stared straight ahead at the street's opposite end, walking slowly toward him, was his enemy, his brother, his mirror image. And the town's pretty schoolmarm walked an identical street at that very moment, facing a doppelganger of her own, her feet like his, poised, seeking the next step, and neither could help it at all. The sweat dripped down his cheek. The Avilla boys he knew were crouching in the doorways, leaning from second-story windows, and the gang from the Hungry Ghost Ranch covered him from every angle. The clock ticked on toward that highest of high noons, when time, the old codger, will expire, as did Gabby Hayes in 1969. Suddenly he heard from behind the voice of the cosmos, deep and unmistakable. "Drop your ego on the ground right there. I've got you covered." And he knew the jig was up. The Lama Swine Toil. I've done translations all my life. I always loved language. I studied languages only and able to be able to read poetry in other languages. And the first thing I ever published when I was in college was translations of Sappho from Greek. I won't read Sappho today, but I'll do a poem of Horace and a couple little bits from Alcaius. Here's the famous poem from Horace. When I get to the end, you'll recognize a part. Don't ask, Laconoi. It is taboo to know what fate I've got and what's awaiting you. Forget the tarot reader. It's best to tough it out. No, Jupiter may give us many years, or this may be the last we see the Tuscan sea come break against the rocks. Be wise, strain wine. Don't hold great long-term hopes. We talk, and jealous time runs on. Just seize this day, think nothing of the next. So there's Carpe Diem, seize the day. And as it happens, these ones from Alcaius, I put together a little collection of Alcaius once. I called it Alcaius Happy Hour, because a lot of his poems are, he says, finding various reasons to drink. So here are three little bits from Alcaius. Zeus nods, the heavens open up, and all the streams are frozen hard. Put down the storm, build up the fire, pour a good big bowl of wine. Oh, honey sweet. Then pile soft pillows on either side your brow. So there's, you should drink because it's cold, right? Well, the next one is about this time of year. Wet your throat with wine. The dog star's here again, and hard days too. In this heat, all people drink. Cicadas sing from under leaves, and from their wings the shrill song pours when heat fire flashes and spreads across the earth. Everything is dry. But the artichoke is blooming, and the women do as they like, while the men grow thin and wasted in brain and limb by that scorcher, the dog star. So, what was it, 95 degrees? It was 100 in the city today. So, and here's the last of this little series from Alcaius that I brought. Let's drink. Don't wait for dark. A finger's all that's left of day. So, from the shelf get down, my dear, the biggest cups, for wine that frees from care was given us by Zeus's son and Semele. Pour cups brimful and mixed quite strong. Let one cup quick pursue the last. So, I think I'll conclude with something that is very old. I wrote many years ago when I was handing out poetry broadsides in the street, and it had never been published anywhere, so I thought I'd stick it in at the end here. How to be a poet. Still your mind a moment. Let the sludge roll off. Unplug the robot wires that feed the ego cash pump whine. Banish the mass media sounds and sights, those hustler demons lower than us at our worst, and look around. Open your senses one after another. Then take a breath, and just before exhaling, watch them dance together. Think of the modern building you most despise and what it's like. Your old uncle, frightening with face creases red and moist at bottom, or a mad monkey, or a vain immortal slug, or the breeze from hospital antiseptic, or the building you most love and what it's like. Fingers on soft flesh, clouds of good memory, ants relating secret lore, a spicy wind in winter. Think of when you've been highest and lowest, and what the colors of the planets smelled like then. Tell about a street corner familiar as an office mate, a tree distinct from all the rest, a squirrel about whom you imply in 20 words a season's career. Know that your soul is holy and perfect and base and mortal and easily hurt, and there the plot gets thick. Know that your sisters and brothers beat with the same heart, pounding to keep up with itself, and you may look to their eyes for the proof. Make love to the lovely welcoming you. Thank you.
There goes Bill on his motorcycle. What a treat, what a treat. William Seaton.